Good evening and welcome to Realty Coffee Talk on Awaz Entertainment. My name is Tahir. I'm a fellow of Rules Institute of Canada, broker of record for City Pro Realty Inc. brokerage, and your host. Tonight we pick up a topic: rights and responsibilities of landlord and tenants. In Ontario, we have a law. It's called Residential Tenancy Act. In Ontario that gives landlord tenants specific rights and obligation. It provides rules for increasing rental, evicting tenants, and also maintenance. And for real estate professional, we're going to talk about the process we go through when we are entertaining a tenant. We are listing a property for leasing on MLS or exclusive listing, and then we have a tenant. We enter into an agreement. What are the steps that we go through this process? So let's talk about this tenant. So let's assume you have a high listing brokerage to list your property for a rental. So you want a specific selection, a tenant with a specific criteria. You have a requirement. You want the rental application, and you want the employment letter. You want their credit reports and references, blah, blah, blah. They're all those prerequisites that you want. You put your property in there on the MLS through your real estate broker, and then you seek through cooperation from the real estate brokers and agent working in the industry to bring you a tenant. So that's a process we go through. It's a tenant selection process. Basically, we put an MLS, and then we have an offer coming directly through a cooperating broker, or a tenant will reach out to you and you have a multiple representation. At this stage, we are okay with that because we don't have to go through the process of this RICO guidelines coming up on December 1st under TRISA. So we follow the present protocol that we have. We have a Real Estate Business Broker Act, Code of Ethics 580/5 regulation that tell us how to proceed and how to cooperate, how to disclose all the information. Okay, so you have an agent. So when you are listing a property, you want to make sure that the property has all the compliance to the bylaws, to make sure it's a legal basement apartment, for example, or if it's a house, obviously it is in compliance, or apartment. So make sure all the maintenance, all the fixture, the appliances, everything is in a functioning order, because you need to have that thing tested before you hand over. So you have prepared the property, is being shown, and you have an agent. So selection of a tenant, that's the process. You have a privately advertised, maybe on Google or Facebook, MarketWatch, or through realtors. It all depends. So it's a tenant selection process, because you have certain requirements, certain condition, depending on is a house or semi-house, detached or home, or is a condominium or a basement apartment. So you have a selection process. So you finally selected a tenant that you enter into an agreement. We normally use our Ontario Real Estate Board form, which is a lease agreement. But under the Residential Tenancy Act, there is an Ontario lease template that you're required to complete, which has similar thing. Lots of what we do is that we create a URIA form, if it's a URIA form, lease agreement, and then we integrate by preparing the Ontario Residential Tenancy agreement. So that is required, and you have to furnish a copy to the Residential Tenancy Tribunal, Rental Tribunal, so they have a copy. A landlord and you have issues, and then you can go back. So in the lease agreement, we already verified it in case a, 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 a tenant provided employment letter, and you have to make sure you don't misrepresent, because if you enter into an agreement by falsifying, fabricating, or giving wrong information, you can be in trouble, because if you have not good and honest and good faith intentions to lease a property, and information you provided was false or fraudulent, and then to acquire a property, and use of the property is also issue. So in the lease agreement, you have terms and condition, you may have a rental application, you put all the condition in that. As long as it allows a free use and enjoyment of the property by the tenant, there should be no problem. All clauses has to be in compliance to the Residential Tenancy Act, and fair and reasonable. And normal wear and tear is not a part of any claim against the tenant, negligence or damaging the property. So you can have a clauses reviewed by your lawyer. I always suggest that, because it's a legal issues when you are renting, and also a tenant is involved, and there are many obligations involved, have your offer reviewed by your lawyer. Pay some money. You have spent thousands and thousands of dollars to acquire a property, and then you are giving that property to somebody. You invested $500,000. Now a small one bedroom apartment. We just bought my client today closed a property, condominium, over 500,000, small 500 square feet, a condominium apartment. So and you have to cover the cost. The biggest issue is the cost of carrying a condominium or a rental property. Most cases, if you're talking about, let's say, condominium apartment, you can ask for that. And if the mortgage payment or your down payment doesn't break you even, you might have to pay from your pocket. So these are the issues that you have to finalize when you're negotiating lease agreement. So when terms and conditions of the lease agreement has been agreed and in compliance to the law, then everything will move forward. The only thing is the tenant to look after the property, and also to make sure they make the payment. The problem always is that when the lease is signed, payments are not made. So when you finalize the terms of the lease agreement, the first thing is to deposit. In most cases, first and last month deposit are given to the brokerage, and if there's a cooperating agent is involved, then half a month of rental is given to the cooperative brokerage, and then the half of the rent is given to the listing brokerage. Normal cases, and then any checks that are coming in as a posted check is not required by law, because you have an option, electronic transfer or check. It's not required by law, but if you have agreed as a condition of lease agreement, then you have to provide. You don't necessarily, and then you have to provide to make sure the deposit that you give when you sign the lease agreement is done within the time frame, normally 24 hours. And once the agreement is done, you have done an inspection, you visit with the landlord, you do the touring of the property, identify any deficiencies or any damage that exists there, which can be noted. Could be a video, could be a picture. It's a good idea to have the recording of that possession when you took a possession, because when you vacate the property, you will also have to make sure you live in the same condition. So after everything is done, everything is moving along, the next thing will be rental increases. That's the issue that comes in after renewal after 1 year. So if you sign an agreement to extend, and you have now it identifies that you have an existing agreement unless you want to go month to month. Because under Residential Tenancy Act, month to month, each party can give a 60 days notice to terminate the residency agreement after the terms has been expired and you are on a month to month. One thing you all have to remember, that if a landlord is renting their own property, they're out of the town or working somewhere else, they decided to come back, or their family wants to use the property, then you have a legitimate reason to ask the tenant to vacate the property and send a notice to you. Also provide the notice to landlord and tenants board, and they go through a process and notify the tenant and give them their form, and then you go through this to make sure the tenant is cooperating, is vacating, because this property you want for a personal use. Personal use could be you, your family, or your children. Sometimes parents wants to live, that they can fall into it, because if they are under your obligation, the parents will also qualify in that area. But this is where you need to check with your lawyer or a legal counsel and a legal assistant to help you deal with the landlord tenant board to pursue you, help you to get the vacation back. Similarly, tenant has the same right and responsibility. They have the right that they are paying rent, they're not they're delinquent in payment, they have the right to enjoy the property, the privacy of their own. So you not to be disturbed, and if you have to sell the property, don't put in a property in the market for rental, because you create the problem, inconvenient for them. So, I mentioned in the past that sometimes tenants are not cooperative because they have a good deal, they don't want to leave. And you can't blame them. But this is where the challenge is, that the buyer will not be able to see on time. You have to follow instruction. You have to give 24-hour notice. Lots of issues come into the picture. So this is why it's very important. Now, tenant increase are issued by the government of Ontario, and they put out a bulletin how much increase you will have in a very specific year. So you cannot increase more than that unless you have legitimate reason, and you have to apply to the board to seek additional approval because of cost beyond your control. And some major work, damage has been done to the property, you have no choice. But you have to help, and you have a valid lease with tenant, you have obligation to you work with the tenant to rearrange something for them until your property is fixed and they can come back to the property. So rental increase, you cannot unilaterally increase, but you follow the guidelines from the Ontario government and you follow those and apply that. That will apply in the second year. Now, entry to the unit is another issue. Sometimes circumstances happen because of what's happening in the marketplace now. The cost of carrying a house or a unit is very difficult for financing purposes. So lots of people who have a reduction in income, they have inability to carry on a property, and therefore they need to have access to the property. They may have a direct buyer, who may be interested to assume the tenant. When you try to sell a rental property, you have to remember one thing. If you have an existing lease agreement, you cannot terminate that agreement. The buyer has to assume that tenant for that remaining period of lease. There is also a gentleman agreement. If the law says that if the tenant is moving out, you may have to give 1 month rental because you want him to vacate an inconvenience. So the tenant has to find a place. Let's assume the buyer person or the family wants to move into the house. So they have to look for a house, they have to remove, and after 60 days, they need to be given 1 month rent so they can cover their carrying expenses. And this is part of the legislative changes that came in, and we are supposed to cooperate and work with the tenant, and they all know that. So most important thing, when the tenant is living in your property, if you have issues, they are not related to a normal wear and tear, because as a landlord, you own the property. It's your responsibility to provide safe building a home for the tenant enjoyment, because they're paying. Now, when you painted the house and you move in, and you're being paid a amount because you prepare the property, and also you should maintain this property, and maybe every year or two paint it again, because the tenant is paying the same amount, or maybe more actually, because of increase in rental after the subsequent years. And if there are any improvement, or there are any major maintenance problem, your furnace is giving problem, your washing machine is giving problem, which is not normal case. It is because of the age of the equipment, or your cooktop stop working, is no longer working. And sometime in the lease agreement, it says, okay, up to $25, $50 the tenant pay. If beyond that is something to do with the equipment itself, malfunction of the equipment, the landlord is responsible. Furnace is not working. That is owned by the landlord, not by the tenant. Tenant only has the access to the remote to adjust the temperature in the house. And therefore, you as a landlord are responsible for the fixing of the units, except there's a normal wear tear, and they're responsible. So this is very important for all landlord and also the tenants. What are your responsibility and what are your obligations? So you maintain, landlord wants to make sure the building is safe for living and is well prepared, painted, clean, and all equipment is in a functioning order. Same thing, the tenant is supposed to maintain that, not to paint or change things without the consent of the landlord. So basically, you have to cooperate with each other, be respectful, be kind to each other, and protect each other's privacy, and a cooperation in good spirit, good faith. When you enter into an agreement, have a good faith in there. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll come back and continue our conversation, rights and obligation of landlord and tenants.
हसीन लगना तो सभी चाहते हैं, मगर हुस्न का निखार तभी मुमकिन है जब आपका स्टाइलिस्ट हो एक्सपर्ट एंड क्वालिफाइड। ब्यूटी बार एंड ब्राइडल, ऑल एक्सपर्टीज इन वन पॉइंट। हमारे यहाँ थ्रेडिंग, लेटेस्ट फेशियल ट्रीटमेंट, बेस्ट बॉडी वैक्सिंग, मेकओवर जैसा आप चाहें, जबरदस्त ब्राइडल पैकेज, मैनिक्योर, पेडिक्योर, केराटिन ट्रीटमेंट, क्रायो हेयर ट्रीटमेंट और बहुत कुछ जो आपके हुस्न को चार चांद लगा दे। तो देर किस बात की, अभी विजिट कीजिए ब्यूटी बार एंड ब्राइडल। वी आर लोकेटेड एट 5150 डिक्सी रोड, यूनिट 6, मिसिसॉगा। अवार्ड विनिंग इंडियन ब्यूटी सैलून। For appointments, call now 437-324-2885. Beauty Bar and Bridal, one stop beauty salon.
मुसलमान होने के नाते हमें इस बात पे फख्र है कि हम हलाल तरीके से जिंदगी गुजार रहे हैं, लेकिन आपको इस बात का कैसे पता चलेगा जिन हेल्थ सप्लीमेंट्स का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं वो हलाल हैं या नहीं? पेश करते हैं न्यूट्रिलक्स। हमारे पास बेहतरीन क्वालिटी और रेंज ऑफ हेल्थ सप्लीमेंट्स मौजूद हैं जो कि हलाल सर्टिफाइड हैं और 100% वीगन हैं। बच्चों के लिए हमारे पास मजेदार गमी की शक्ल में विटामिन्स मौजूद हैं जो उनकी जरूरी गजाइयत को हासिल करना आसान और खुशगवार बनाते हैं। मर्दों के लिए हमारे सप्लीमेंट सेहतमंद और तंदुरुस्त रहने का आसान तरीका पेश करते हैं, चाहे आप एक एथलीट हो, बिजी प्रोफेशनल या पेरेंट। खवातीन के लिए हमारे सप्लीमेंट्स हैं जो आपकी मजमूई सेहत और तंदुरुस्ती में मदद करते हैं, चाहे आप अपनी एनर्जी को बढ़ाना चाहते हैं या अपने स्किन और बालों को सेहतमंद रखना चाहते हैं। और बुजुर्गों के लिए हमारे टैबलेट्स आपकी सेहत की खुसूसी जरूरियात को पूरा करने और आपकी उम्र के साथ साथ आपको एक्टिव और इंडिपेंडेंट रहने में एक अहम किरदार अदा करती है। न्यूट्रिलक्स सप्लीमेंट्स जिंदगी के हर मरहले के लिए, ताकि आप अपने हलाल अख्तार पर कायम रह सकें।
HK Movers. Home, offices, apartments and delivery. Big or small, we move it all.
HK Movers.
Local and long distance. We also ship cars, trailer transport and moving services.
For service with a smile, give us a call.
Call Mr. Harminder 416-524-6704.
416-524-6704 पे.
Visit 140 Advance Boulevard, Unit number 10, Brampton.
Long distance moving specialist.
HK Movers. HK Movers.
मैं नासिर शाह आपका मॉर्गेज ब्रोकर। अगर आपको मॉर्गेज चाहिए किसी तरह की, होटल लेना है, मोटल लेना है, गैस स्टेशन लेना है या किसी प्लाजे में कोई यूनिट बाय करना है, तो उसके लिए आप हमें कॉल करें। हम दो चीजों की गारंटी करते हैं, आपको बेस्ट टर्म्स एंड कंडीशन और बेस्ट रेट दिलाएंगे। आप कॉल करें 647-741-9000 647-741-9000।
आदाब, नमस्ते और सत श्री अकाल। जब भी बात होती है कार एक्सीडेंट की तो हम तलाश करते हैं एक लॉयर को, और हमारे पास मौजूद हैं चैंपियन। जी हाँ, डेविड हेमोफार।
Yes, thank you. I'm David Himmelfarb. I have over 30 years experience in personal injury matters. We have a downtown Toronto location with over 22 lawyers to service you. And we speak your language, Urdu, Punjabi and Hindi. We have a great community liaison, Anjum Qureshi.
आप हमें कॉल कर सकते हैं 416-570-0157।
Welcome to City Pro Realty. We are 100% Canadian family-owned real estate brokerage. If you are thinking of buying or selling residential or commercial real estate, think of us. Call us. We are one-stop solution provider for your real estate needs. Our passion is real estate. Your success is our priority. Our commission plans to meet your budget. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. A family serving family. To search for sale properties and free reports, visit www.citypro.net.
डिक्सी इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स और अप्लायंसेस पिछले 16 सालों से खरीदारों की खिदमत कर रहे हैं। हम लगातार 4 सालों से खरीदारों की पहली पसंद बने रहने का अवार्ड हासिल कर चुके हैं। हम किचनर्स, बॉश, वर्लपूल, एलजी, सैमसंग और जनरल इलेक्ट्रिक के ऑथराइज्ड डीलर हैं। 5 स्टार खिदमत का लुत्फ लें। हम आप सभी को टीवी सबसे ज्यादा रियायती दामों पर देने की गारंटी देते हैं। www.dixieelectronics.ca हमारी वेबसाइट पर जाएं या अभी कॉल करें 905-625-5900। सभी बहुत ही मुनासिब कीमत पर दस्तयाब हैं, जो आप बाआसानी से ले सकते हैं। At Dixie, we sell quality and deliver confidence.
Good evening and welcome to Realty Coffee Talk on Awaz in Tema in Canada around the world. My name is Tahir Qureshi. I'm a fellow of Royal Institute of Canada, broker of record for City Pro Realty Inc. brokerage. We're talking about rights and responsibilities of landlords and tenants. So we're talking about rental increase. So it's called above guideline increases. So Government of Ontario from January 1st to 31st December for a year, they set up a percentage of normal rental increase that you can do. You can increase in your subsequent period. But if you have extraordinary increases due to municipality taxes for associated with residential complex, or you have an eligible capital cost related to significant renovation or repairs of the building, as a single or a complex, or you have a landlord has additional operating costs related to the security of the residential complex, for example. So they need to apply to the Landlord and Tenants Board before they send charge to the tenants. They need to notify 90 days before to the tenant before they charge it, and they have to get the approval from the board in order to do this. And tenant has the right in, let's assume a landlord increase the rental, the tenant can go up to 20 to 12 months from the day they increase unnecessary or increase beyond the guidelines rental, they can go back to the tribunal and seek some help. So this is very important. Now, most other important thing is entry to the rental unit. And sometime the landlord has to fix something, or they need some inspection of the property structure, or have if the tenant has to move out, they need to visit. So this is very important that you should set up at least 24-hour advance notice to the tenant to visit the unit. Sometimes circumstances happen, the landlord may want to sell the property because they can't afford it anymore based on the financial reason. And if the valid license, valid lease is there, then the buyer has to assume that. That would be the condition for the sale. If the property has on month to month and buyer wants to move into the unit, then they have to provide notice, 60 days notice. Normally last day of the month you have to give notice, so subsequent next day it begins for 60 days. And landlord also have to give 1 month rental to them. So this is very important to give notice in time, especially when you give notice to them. You share with the, unless you want the tribunal to act on this, you wait for the period when that notice terminates, or let's say 60 days. If the tenant has not moved out, then you approach the tenant board, but you have an email or person delivered, how you delivered the notice, all those correspondence with you and some witnesses to that effect. Now, most important thing is landlord. The landlord must keep the building and the rental units in a good state of repair, complying with all the health, safety, housing maintenance standards. Landlords are responsible for repair even if the tenant knew about problem before agreeing to rent the home. The landlord is responsible for fixing anything that breaks or does not work properly. Broken refrigerator I mentioned before, clogged drain or leakage pipe. These are the responsibility of the landlord. The landlord is responsible for getting rid of pets, if the pests, cockroaches, mice in the house, and the tenant should work cooperatively with the landlord to abide by the treatment plans to achieve pest control. Now, similarly, the tenants are responsible for fixing any damage that is they or their guests cause. If somebody comes to your house and damage your property, and you are a tenant, you're responsible for that. If you're facing a maintenance issue that your landlord has not dealt with, do not withhold rent. You're not supposed to withhold rent. But if you withhold your rent to get repairs done, the property owner may apply to evict you because you have violated the terms. Biggest thing, bad thing you can do is to stop the payment of the rent. Now, if the property owner has filed an eviction application against you, you may bring up any repair and maintenance issue at the hearing. So, goes back and forth, both ways. And the board, hearing board, will understand that. And there are standards and enforcement. So the best thing is to talk to your lawyer or paralegal to guide you how to go about it if there is a challenge. It always originates from when you build the relationship, when you sign the lease agreement, what your decision was relied upon, information provided to you. For example, I remember one time a friend of mine, their daughter has some problem with cats and dogs smell and or hair through the ventilation system, and she rented a basement because she was alone at that time, so she needed some financial support. So the lady who took that house from basement, she did not tell that she has a big house and a big cat because there's some domestic problem. But when she moved in, next day she brought in dog, and because of vapor or hair going through ash wax, her daughter, who has some disability, also got sick because of that, and doctor has a report. So she went to the tribunal and provided medical reports that she did not disclose when we gave it to her. I would not have given her the unit. So they evicted her, plus she stopped paying the rental on top of that. So she was evicted. So this is why it's important that to disclose things to everyone, all the parties involved. So now common area depends if you are in a complex, indoor temperature and vital services. The landlord is responsible for cleaning and maintaining the common or shared areas of the building. For example, you have a complex multi-unit, such as hallways and yards, and landlord is also responsible for removing snow from driveways and walkways. If this is a duplex or multiplex or condo apartment, so this applies to that. Now, indoor temperature, landlord must provide heat between September 15 to May 31st so that the temperature in the rental unit is at least 21 Celsius according to City of Toronto bylaws. That's what they are. Similarly, other cities as well. And if the building has air conditioning, the landlord to required to turn it on between June 2nd and September 14 to maintain a maximum temperature not more than 26 degrees centigrade. So these are the requirements specified in the guidelines. Also, I request all of you to go to Residential Tenancy Board webpage and download rental housing standards and enforcement. So therefore, you know your rights and you know your obligation. And what are the vital services? So let's talk about vital services. Vital services, your hot water, your cold water, electricity, heat, and fuel, natural gas. The landlord cannot shut these services. Even if the tenant has not paid the rent, you cannot shut them off. The vital services may be temporarily shut off for the minimum period necessary in order to make repairs. Landlord must notify tenants of the interruption of vital services. The landlord and tenants can agree in lease that the tenant will pay these services as a standard fee each month. Utilities are included in the rent or based on what his tenant uses. Sometimes if you are living in a house and basement is rented, you shared 30-60, 30-70, 70% by the main floor and 30% by the basement, if there is only 1 meter. So in a condominium, you may have a separate unit. So this is very important. Now, the other important thing is pets. This is very important because most landlord don't want any pets. So landlord has the right to refuse tenant if they suspect that they will move with pets. However, once a landlord accepts a tenant in spite of any legal, verbal agreement or contract stipulation, landlord cannot evict tenant for pet ownership under most circumstances. So that's a challenge, okay? A tenant cannot be legally evicted because they have a pet violation of a no pets clause in the rental agreement. You can evict them. So you have to live with it. But you may have a clause in the agreement that if any damage is done by your pet, you are responsible for that. You replace it or repair it, and that's the only way to go about it. And the landlord have a valid reason to apply to evict a tenant for having a pet if the pet damages the property, disturbs the reasonable enjoyment of other tenants, or infringes on the rights of other tenants, is dangerous or an illegal breed, pit bull, contravenes municipal laws, too many pets, or if you don't clean up after your pet. So these are the issues. And then the other issue is discrimination. A landlord must adhere to the human rights codes and cannot select or refuse tenant based on race, place of origin, ethnic origin, religion, sex, age, sexual orientation, marital status, family status, disability. For example, a landlord cannot refuse to rent to you because you are a newcomer to Canada or because you have children. Tenant, if you are experiencing discrimination, find legal help. And eviction. So now we're going to talk about the eviction. There is a legal process under Residential Tenancy Act which a landlord must follow in order to evict a tenant. There are many points in this process at which a tenant can try to fix the situation and or pay arrears and have the eviction stopped. Basically, if they have these issues, payment is one of them, enjoyment is second of them, noise, animals, many other things, and abusive behavior, too much noise affecting the people, and those are the things that can create an environment where landlord will seek eviction. Landlord cannot change the locks or cut of vital services to evict a tenant. This can only be done by the court enforcement officer, sheriff, on the basis of an order from the Landlord and Tenant Board. So you just don't do it. You are violating the law. You wait until you get the approval and then you go further. Tenants, you do not have to move out upon receiving a notice of eviction. Any LTB form that begins with an N or informal letter notifying you of eviction. This is just a notice. If you do not want to move out, your landlord must then file an application to evict with LTB. It will be determined at your LTB hearing. LTB is Landlord Tenants Board, whether or not eviction will proceed. And they are the judge. They will make the decision. If your landlord changes your locks, cuts off any vital services, or harassing you by telling you to leave your apartment, contact the Rental Housing Enforcement Unit. There is a number 1-888-772-9277 or 416-585-7214 to address the issues. So this is important that you understand your obligations, your rights. So download the T2 form application about tenant rights. It's very, very important for you to understand your responsibilities and rights. So I suggest you again consult with a legal counsel or a legal assistant to help you to understand before you enter into a lease agreement. We use Ontario lease agreement. One is the Ontario Rules Board, which Realtor use it. Then you also have a standard Residential Tenancy Act. Under the Residential Tenancy Act by the Government of Ontario, you have to integrate that together, or you just use that one. So it's very, very important that you have the rights to enjoy it as a tenant, but you also have obligation to maintain the property. Similarly, tenant, landlord, you are responsible to maintain and not to cut off any vital services, and also do not change the locks. Reach out to the landlord and tenant board and seek proper eviction if you require to do that, or collection of your rent in area if you want to negotiate and continue to enjoy the tenancy by your tenant. Thank you for watching. If you have any question, feel free to call me directly, 416-451-3489. All our episodes are available on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. So I request you to go to realtycoffeetalk.com and subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch all episodes. We broadcast our episodes 7 p.m. on every Thursday. And if you have any question, give us a call at 647-484-0018. Your feedback is appreciated. Thank you for watching. May God bless you all. May God bless Canada. See you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Bye for now.